I wanted you to know that the RASE Commission, which the mayor and the county executive appointed and which officially began to work in August, has been fully engaged with the events of the past 7 days, extremely frustrated. We add another dimension to the community's frustration because the mayor knew about this. She said she viewed the videotape on August 4th. The commission members were sworn in on August 10th, and at no time did anyone bring this to our attention. Not that it would have mattered, but as a result of this announcement, we had to ask that 2 members who were appointed to the commission stand down, and that was Chief Singletary and Mike Mazzio, the president of the Locust Club. They were co-chairing, co-facilitating work groups. They were into the work, and when this news hit, we felt that it would be untenable for them to continue serving on the commission. And so we immediately asked the mayor to remove them. They both were her designees. And so we asked, and she complied. We also asked the mayor to come meet with us. Now, I was a little behind other people in the community. I was not able to see the 6 o'clock news. I saw the press conference at noon with the family and the attorneys, the Prude family, but the point wasn't driven home until I saw those videos. And I taped your news, your 6 o'clock news, and I taped all 4 channels, and then I've watched those videos at about 8 o'clock, and I was absolutely just horrified at what I saw. Talked to my colleagues, Arlene Santiago and Dr. Shafiq. We sent a letter to the mayor at about 10 o'clock that evening, demanding answers and asking for a meeting. I spoke to the mayor the next morning. I told her that this was not a good look for the commission. Not that we should be receiving a special privilege, but we were convened to deal with this kind of issue. And it would have been quite nice to know that there was this kind of issue on back steps. So we did meet with the commission. We're doing it virtually, and on Sunday, the mayor and the county executive appeared before the commission. And not only did they have to answer questions about this, but the events of the previous evening, with the protesters, with the police dogs, with the tear gas, people being pelted with pepper balls. I know several people who sustained injuries, including 2 of our RASE staff people. One who was, and 2 of our commissioners. One who was shot directly in the eye, and he said if it weren't for his glasses, he would have sustained a serious injury. And so we made our dissatisfaction, our displeasure, our outrage very clear. We then scheduled, that was on Sunday, and then we scheduled a meeting that was on Monday, that was Labor Day. We then scheduled a meeting with Chief Singletary that was supposed to happen last night. He was supposed to come before the commission last night. Of course, he retired, he announced his retirement. We had to delay that meeting. We didn't know at the time that he was still on the job, so we still intend to bring him there. I want the community to understand 2 very simple things. It's very fortuitous that this commission, the RASE Commission, has been created and it's starting to work. We have 9 working groups. We have over 200 citizens who are engaged in that work, and they've been energetically. In fact, this morning there was a meeting in the county executive's office with our mental health and addiction services co-facilitators, and the county executive, I'm sure he'll make an announcement about this, was trying to speed up the process of examining how mental health dollars are being spent. The county has a $40 million a budget in the Office of Mental Health, and so work is going on. I want the community to know that work is going on. And I do know that there's been some chatter among some people who felt dishonored and disrespected because they were not a part of the process. We had a very meticulous screening process. It was a community-based screening panel. We had over 500 people who expressed interest in serving on the commission. We had the commission actually interviewed 230 people just for 13 seats. So I kept telling people, it's impossible to seat 230 people on a 21-member commission. But there are many, many other ways that they can be involved. And so we're starting that process of scheduling our town halls, public meetings, bringing expert testimony to come. And we're pleased with the direction that it's going. And I want you to know that in some instances we may have to speed up our work to deal with some of these exigent crises, but we don't want to shortcut the process. We want to make sure this work is thorough. So I'm very, very pleased to be involved with this. The second point is equally important. This is not, the RASE Commission is not an arm of the city and the county government. We were appointed by the city mayor and the county executive. It is an independent commission, and we have gotten the principals to reaffirm when they met with us the other day, reaffirm that they will honestly receive the recommendations wherever they may lead, however unpleasant, however distasteful those recommendations will be, and that they will commit to a process of taking these recommendations to the point of implementation. We're kind of blessed because on our RASE Commission, we have 2 city council people, very outspoken. We have Steve Brew, who is the majority leader, the Republican majority leader of the county legislature. We have other members of the commission. We will not have our report disregarded and disrespected. And I think that people will see, as this work unfolds, they will see how serious we're going about this work, how substantive this work will be. And I'm committed, being someone who has served on numerous commissions, that I've seen it go both ways. Our recommendations were not only received, but they were acted upon. And I've been on other commissions that our recommendations were dead on arrival because the principal he or she didn't like what we were recommending, and they decided to squash it. I'm not going to be a part of any process that does not listen to the voice of the people. So my presence there, I'm not saying that I'm some kind of valiant soldier. I'm just saying, based on my experience over the 40 years of serving on these kind of commissions, I told the mayor I would not serve on this commission unless I had her full commitment that she would not merely respect our process, but that she would honor the work that's coming forth. So we intend to have our final recommendations by the February deadline. So I'll take your questions on that, but I want to just add something. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of my 2 colleagues, Arlene Santiago and Dr. Mohammed Shafiq, the co-chairs. They have helped me put this press release together. They have reviewed it. I'm standing here with their total support. But now I take off my co-chair hat and I put on my hat as the former mayor of the city of Rochester and as someone who has been in Mayor Warren's shoes, having dealt with all kinds of crises, people being seriously injured and fatally wounded by the Rochester Police Department, people killing each other. We had a horrible reputation back in the 90s, tremendous problem of black-on-black crime. I've been there. I understand what's going on. And what I'm seeing is this city is slowly and devolving into chaos. Certainly all of us were caught off guard yesterday with the resignation of the entire command structure at the Rochester Police Department. That may have pleased some people who say we don't need police. It doesn't please the majority of citizens of this community who understand the role that police play. We say not defund the police, we say reform the police. And that's the kind of work that we're going to hopefully lead to. I've sat watching this on my television screens, because I'm 78 years old, and I am high risk at being in crowds. So I'm not going into any crowds. That's just it. I can express my outrage, and I can do this work in other ways. What I have seen is earnest, heartfelt expressions of concern and a demand for change from a new generation of leaders in our community. And whether we agree with everything that they say, they need to be heard. They should not have to engage in tactics of disruption to get our attention. They should not have to be out on the streets every night putting their lives at risk, because I will tell you, we are extremely fortunate. We are extremely fortunate that no lives have been lost yet in this demonstration, in these demonstrations. But we can't take the risk that that's not going to happen, because the tactics continue to escalate, the tensions continue to increase, and the patience is continuously worn out. So I don't want to sit by and watch something happen that moves us to another whole dimension, because now we're mourning the loss of other lives. I think it's time to have a ceasefire, if only for a brief time, a cessation of hostilities. I know that people on both sides will probably reject it out of hand, but hear me out for a second. Hear me out for a second. The point has been made emphatically that something is wrong with our systems of government. The point has been made emphatically that however the police have been trained, that training is not complete. I cannot imagine a training protocol that would say you would leave a human being out in the cold, sitting on cold streets in the snow, without offering the simple gesture of putting a blanket around that person, without offering the simple gesture of moving that person from the street into a warm place, a police car, a wagon. We heard, not only did our eyes see that tape, we heard the chatter in the background. And I'm still waiting to hear one of those officers say, let's warm up this man, let's move this man. To have him seated on that ground for 30 plus minutes in that kind of weather, even if it was today like today, it would be absolutely inhumane to do that, to have him there. And so I think that the training that the police departments receive needs to be revisited. And I think that it is not, it's easier said than done, but this whole element of empathy, compassion, you need to adjust your responses to reflect that. And so, the point has been made. We don't need to make it. How many times do you need to put an exclamation point behind a statement of fact? The point has been made over and over and over again. And what I'm suggesting is that those parties try something that they have not yet tried, that they cease their hostilities, they shut down their rhetoric, that they stop pointing fingers of accusation about who's right and who's wrong, and that they come together. Now, not all 1,000 of them can sit around a table, but they need to understand the whole process of negotiation. You don't get everything you ask for. That's not the way it happens. I get something, you get something, and we decide what is it that's important. That, in my opinion, has not been tried. I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm speaking for the fact that I have been trained in the skill of mediation for over 35 years, and I've used those and deployed those tactics in this community and in other communities. And there is one source, it's not the only one, but I will propose it, and I will direct your attention to the website. I, last year, did some work for a program called the Divided Community Project. It's based out of Ohio State University, and it's law school, and it dispatches trained mediators to help diffuse very tense situations. They sent me into Bloomington, Indiana, and I spent several months there around the issue of white nationalism. As you know, Indiana is a very conservative state, and there was tremendous uproar because a white nationalist had essentially had invaded, they believe, public space. And the city was demanded to remove this vendor from that space. Easier said than done. I spent several months in going back and forth to Bloomington. If you go onto the website of the Divided Cities Project, I was going to make copies to hand out to you, but I decided you use your paper, not mine. So if you go to the Divided Community Project, you will see a full description, not only of the work that it does, but you will see the communities that it has been engaged in. And there is even a spot talking about the Bloomington Project. I was on the phone, I'm not at liberty to say, with residents from another community that's up in arms just 2 weeks ago, trying to help them together with my colleagues. And this is the kind of work you bring in somebody completely from the outside. They would not send me to work in Rochester. You bring in somebody completely from the outside who's neutral and who has the skills to bring people together. And they find a way. Not everybody will agree to this. Not everybody in Bloomington agreed with that approach. And I found it difficult to meet with key players. I did the same thing in Sanford, Florida, shortly after Trayvon Martin's killing. A community, a black community, completely alienated from city government. We went in, we spent almost a year and just patiently bringing people together, patiently getting people to understand each other and to utilize the resources that they now gain from this ability now to tap into a network that they had been excluded from. I've been to Korea, talking with communities in Seoul and other places, 4 communities in Korea I've spoken to about how to use people, engaging them, bringing them together. I believe that it is time for such an approach here. And the Divided Community Project may not be I know it's not the only voice, and there may be others out there, but I'm suggesting that this community doesn't have to come from the mayor. In fact, this morning, I spoke with the deputy director of that project to find out what mechanism does it take to engage. They need only an invitation from a community to come in, and it may not work, but I believe right now is the time for us to cool down the passions. And I'm not telling people to forego their heartfelt, passionate beliefs. I'm saying you've been heard. Let's bring you together. Bring the Black Lives Movement together. All the other groups, all right? Bring UCLM together. Bring with the mayor, with the police department, with the county executive. And not that they will be in a situation where they will be encouraged to go after each other, but in a calm, dispassionate, with a neutral party, trying to direct the flow of those conversations. I know that if I were still the mayor, I would utilize such a resource because we are seeing what's happening here, and it is very sad. And the reason I came to stand in front of Frederick Douglass is think about the challenges he faced. Think about talking about abolition efforts in a community and in a country which was not in tune with that. But think about how he continued to persist through his writings, through his oratory, and the like. So I'm not in any way equating myself to Frederick Douglass, but I do think we need to remember the imagery of what this city is. This is a city that's supposed to be at the top of the social justice movement. We proudly celebrate the lives of Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony and others. So why not tap into that legacy and utilize some of the skills that they showed us over a century ago? That's what I'm saying here today. And let me stop and answer any questions that you have.
Are you offering your services as a mediator?
No, I'm not neutral. I'm not neutral, so it would not be me. It would be someone else who would come in from outside of the community. But I would say this, the RASE Commission is a resource, and we already have 200 people working on issues like criminal justice, policing, mental health, job creation, education. We've got those. You'll see the 9 focus areas that are there, and we allow people to volunteer to work on these groups. So we already have that kind of synergy that's moving. It has just begun, so we need to give it a chance to work. I have tremendous faith that it can work.
Mayor Johnson, you started your comments by saying, by saying that you were sworn in a few days after the mayor saw this video.
Yes.
Do you expect her to share that information with you? And if so, do you feel like she missed the opportunity to fulfill a duty you believe she was necessary?
I believe that she had a responsibility. After all, think about the context. We're supposed to be studying this in the context of George Floyd, okay? We got our own George Floyd situation right here that nobody knows anything about. I don't expect that the mayor could share sensitive, confidential information. I think she should have said to that group when she stood there on the 10th of August, she and the county executive, and swore them in. I want you to have a heads up that there is a potential issue that's under investigation. She could have said that to the 3 co-chairs. Look, we've been on the job since June. So she could have said that to any of us. We would have responded accordingly. I don't know all of the demands that were on the mayor. I can't second guess the mayor, because when I was mayor, I didn't want anybody who didn't have all the facts trying to second guess me. But I do say to her, and in hindsight, she does acknowledge that she should have brought that to our attention.
Do you believe she is the appropriate person to lead our city through this?
When you consider, yes, and I tell you why. We are a nation of second chances. I think there has to be an honest acknowledgement that some flawed decisions were made, okay? I can't understand why and how. I said to the mayor on the first night, when I talked to her the next morning, I said, Mayor, you appoint department heads. Their job is to keep you informed. You can be expected to know everything, but the people that you put in charge, that's their job. And their job is not to keep it to themselves, not to decide what can I share with the mayor and what not, because nobody wants to be in the position of being blindsided. I accept her statement that she was blindsided, okay? The chief is saying something different. The chief is saying he informed her. The truth is somewhere in between, all right? But that die is already cast. What has to happen now is there has to be a recognition that this situation has led to a tremendous loss of faith. And you got to work to rebuild it. You just can't say, forgive me. You have to do very tangible things to restore trust. And that's what I'm talking about, a process where if you bring people together who you may or may not, who you may disagree with vehemently, but understand that they've got a legitimate claim to be in this discussion, they represent legitimate interests in this community, they need to be there. So just put on your big boy pants and sit down and deal with it. Because eventually you'll get to a point where people will start talking to each other. But they can't do it if they're standing out in the night. They're police dogs, they're armored policemen, people are throwing things. That's not the environment in which to try to have this kind of conversation.
Do you think it was the right move or incorrect move for the chief or secretary to step down?
I haven't talked to the chief. I talked to him the other day before this happened, and I hope to bring him back to the commission. Chief was on the commission. He co-chaired the policing, a working group, all right? That group wants to hear from him. I can understand. I see the pain in his statement. Nobody wants to have their integrity questioned, their credibility called into question. But he's a young man. And this is not going to be the worst experience he ever had in his life, all right? If he lives long enough, he's going to see as bad or equally or worse. I think that these all can be learning situations. So I'm hopeful. Now, I know there are people who are glad that he's gone, okay? But think about it. Think about the chaos that now exists in the Rochester Police Department. Because what you don't have any command officers who want to run that department. And will it be fair to bring somebody in from outside this community that's not going to. I don't think that will be appropriate. So I think we need to figure out a way to rebuild this, and it's going to be hard work, and it means that people are going to have to just let their feelings be hurt a little bit. But I think they need to lay it down on the table, and you know, look, I had people, you know, the young man, 14 years old. His name escapes me at the moment. Shot between the eyes by the Rochester Police Department. All kinds of situations that were extraordinarily painful that we had to live through. I just think it comes with the job. So I'm not suggesting that he decided to take the easy way out. But that was he had some other options other than resigning on the spot.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
you want Chief Secretary on the commission or to speak to the commission?
Speak to it. He's off the commission. Yeah.
You mentioned negotiation. Who do you think needs to initiate those conversations? The protesters or the administration right now?
Well, I think I'm trying to initiate them right here. All right. I think some other community leaders. I was a little bit flustered when I saw the call to elders. That would have been me. Okay. And I viewed, and a lot of people thought that they were being put in extreme danger because that thing could have gone wrong real fast, and those people would have been standing there in between both sides, all right? But I do think that there are people who are seriously addressing this, trying to find a way to resolve it. So I think if other people in the community hear this call, there's a way community leaders can say, why don't we try it? Why don't we try it? What's the, you know, I hate to quote Donald Trump, but you know, why not try it, okay? What you got to lose, all right? Just a little bit of time, but you might restore some faith, and you might find some common ground. I don't expect that everything, and I keep wanting to say this, I've never met Ashley Gant and Stanley Martin and the young man yesterday who went over to Reverend Stewart. I haven't met any of those people because that's not my job anymore. I've watched them. I see their intensity. I see their commitment. I'd be willing to sit down with them myself. I'd be willing to sit down with them myself and say, you know, based on experience, let's see what this leads to. Give it a chance. I think other people who have better connections to them than I do can do the same thing. And then I'll be persuading the mayor and the county executive. You got to come to this table. Really got to come to this table.
Mayor, can you clarify? You said you spoke with Singletary, and just a minute ago you said he's saying something different than the mayor. He's saying that he informed her. Can you say specifically what he
No, I don't know. I'm just reading his statement. His statement was his integrity was under assault, which would suggest that he's standing by his position. I have not directed any comments to Ron Singletary about this specific instance, but I will tell you this. If he agrees to come before the policing committee and the whole commission, they will ask him that question because they ask those questions in a very pointed way to the mayor and the county executive on when we met Sunday or Monday. I'm trying to clarify which day, because we've had a meeting almost every day. So it would be interesting to hear his side. I saw the story in the New York Times this morning. The mayor said she came upon some new information. I don't know what that is. Okay, I spoke to the mayor last night because we have 2 vacancies to fill, and we were talking about potential candidates to come on the commission. That was the extent of my discussion with her. I have given the mayor a lot of advice, and I will continue to do so. And I expect to have a long, passionate discussion with her about this whole thing. But I just think right now, it's a he said, she said thing. We need to move beyond that and try to figure out what is it that needs to be addressed, and how can we go about addressing it.
When do you plan to fill those 2 vacancies? Do you have a
As soon as possible. I hope to fill one of them. I hope to fill them both today.
Earlier you called for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Explain how you want that to happen.
Well, I would like there to be a night or 2 without any demonstrations, okay? With the assumption that rather than gathering at 1 a.m., let's gather at 1 p.m., okay? Let's try it. Now, I don't know how much control the groups, these are rather autonomous groups, okay? And their model is they don't have leaders. So you kind of have to address your comments to the entire group. I've never been in a Black Lives Matter meeting. I don't know how they operate. I don't know how they think. And some of them may say, I saw a young man say the other day, I think I know that young man, when he was over at Reverend Stewart's event, he said the time for talking is past. Well, in my opinion, it's never too late to talk. All right, even in the darkest hour, you ought to sit and try to talk. So I think we need to persuade these young people who are very impatient that there may be a value in them just for a moment coming, sizing up the situation on their own. They have to sense that there is true commitment, true, what's what I want to look for, a turning around. They have to see that. Not just words, they have to see it. So that means you have to give up something. Well, if I give up something to you, what are you prepared to give up to me? I understand there was a discussion tonight, some of the groups are calling, a virtual town hall to talk about defunding the police, okay? Now, as a mayor who has had to listen to the laments of residents in our inner city communities who are under assault, their homes are being burglarized, there's shootings going all around them, those people are not calling for the end to the police department. In fact, they even ask for more policing, okay? So we need to find a way to balance this. I'd like to believe that what they're saying is you can't have policing operate the way it currently operates, okay? And they may say, well, you tried to reform it before. Well, you know what's missing? You know what's different between this time and my time? This thing. They have this. I can't tell you the number of people that came to me and said, Mayor, so-and-so, I had an encounter with so-and-so police officers. And ironically, some of them were black police officers. And they beat the crap out of me, all right? We tried to investigate it. Turns out, your word against your word. You don't have any documentary proof. And this thing has changed that dynamic completely because you never know. We don't even know if somebody's sitting across the street in those bushes, you know, recording every word that I'm saying, all right, and playing it back. So I think that we are in a different time. We have the evidence. We've seen it. It's irrefutable. Now, how do we deal with it? And you can't say, oh, we followed the rules, because the rules may absolutely be totally erroneous and out of place.
You mentioned Trump, and we are getting this national attention here in obviously not a good way. Is there any, do you have any words to put out there about Rochester and our community? It pains me mightily that Donald Trump could even find a way to compare what's happening in Rochester to what's happening in other communities. But that's the way his mind functions. My thing is, the answer to Trump is election day. That's the answer to Donald Trump, okay? I think that, though, we need to be somewhat mindful. I don't deal in conspiracies, but it is not lost on me that these demonstrations seem to have one common similarity. They're people, you wonder where did they come from? It is not inconceivable to me that the far-right movement is trying to take advantage of these demonstrations and to use it for their own purposes. Listen, in my work in Bloomington, I monitored some of the alt-right websites. I have to tell you, I'm absolutely stunned at the things that you see and hear from those people. So they're not innocent people, and for Donald Trump to keep saying they're good people on that side, I don't see any of them. But I don't think we need to play into their hands. I really don't think we need to play into their hands. And so it's kind of taking a step back, not giving up, not throwing in the white flag of surrender, but saying we're gonna step back and let's reassess the situation. Part of that reassessment ought to be, is there a way that we can sit down with people that we perceive to be our adversaries to try to find some common ground? That's the only thing I'm saying. Not total agreement, not total rejection, but is there a place of common ground that they can stand on? And from that, you build. I've seen it work too many times.
Ms. Johnson, how does the event to the left, how does it inform your work on the RASE Commission? Does it change your trajectory of where you're going?
Yes. It says right now that we have to be even more insistent on our independence. We're not going to be reckless, all right? If we ask for information, we need to get it. We're trying to find where these statutory and systemic barriers are, and they're not just in the obvious places, okay? I mean, I had a noted, one of my colleagues at RIT sent me a note earlier on and said, just don't focus on the police department, focus on the justice system, these town courts, and see the disparity in the way they operate with their suburban residents as opposed to how people are being treated in city court. I think there's just a lot of things out there that we just probably not have been aware of, haven't been focused on. This is the kind of work that we want to get done in this commission in the 6 months. Now, the commission's not going away after 6 months, but we want to give some very substantial recommendations to the city and the county on that 6 month mark. So I think that it has emboldened us, it has enabled us, it has empowered us to take, and it also has put the principals on notice that you can't ignore our work. You created us, you can't abolish us. You know, you think it was bad if the whole command structure of the Rochester Police Department walked away yesterday? What if 24 citizens who you appointed to do this work walked away? That would send one powerful negative message. So I think everybody is on notice to really pay strict and careful attention to this work and to honor this work. I cite in this press release a situation that I happened to be involved in 45 years ago when Denise Hawkins, if you read the city newspaper this past week, they did a very, very good story about the Denise Hawkins case. But that commission, which was chaired by one of the most prominent criminal defense lawyers in this town, Charles Crummy, and co-chaired by Judge Charles Willis, that commission was appointed because this town was about to explode. This town was about to explode after the death of that young woman. Because you got to remember, what was the most incendiary aspect of it? Denise Hawkins was killed. The trigger was pulled by the son of the chief of the police chief. All right, and everybody said it's going to be a whitewash. He's going to be exonerated, which he was. But we found, because we were given unfettered access to all of the policies, practices of the police department, we found many areas of change that we could recommend, and they were adopted. I'm trying to find out what happened to them. I know it's been 45 years and things changed, but some of those things, like training, use of force, training for sensitivity in terms of racial, and even back then, this was a big issue because the city was under a court decree to diversify its police department, something that it hadn't even achieved in 45 years, all right? So there's a lot of things, and I cite that commission as an example of one that was let alone to do its work. No interference from City Hall. Nobody called us and said, come in and give us a progress report. We reported it when we finished our work. Our work was well received. Mayor approved it, City Council approved it, and the police department had to implement the changes that we recommended. So that's the model of what a commission, in my mind, should look like. Left alone to do its work, do good work, and there is documentable progress to substantiate the work. I've served on a commission that was appointed by Governor Spitzer, just to cite the other side of the coin. Governor Spitzer appointed a commission to reform local government in New York State. And I've been a proponent of that. He appointed me to that commission. I felt good. We were going well until Governor Spitzer had to resign. All right? And Governor Patterson, Lieutenant Governor, who was not a part of this, he never embraced that work. He never embraced that work. And so it fell by the wayside. So to me, there are these extremes. We need to, I go to the Crummy extreme. Give us the charge to do our work, make sure that we do our work, and then accept that work when it is complete.
Have you been left alone so far by
Yes.
this administration?
Yes. Well, too much so because she didn't tell us about this incident. Yeah. So, you know, the information needs to come. If there's something that comes up, if there's another case at the county level, at the sheriff's department, don't wait till we see it on the news. You need, as painful as it is, you need to bring us in. And I've seen that. As I say this morning, the county executive convened a meeting in his office with mental health providers and told we got to redesign this system. And that redesign work is going to be coordinated by this working group on the RASE Commission. So I see that happening, and I want to commend that example.
Do you see the police resigning and the whole command staff as a saying that no one can do this job because of the scrutiny, or they're supporting him saying he's being thrown under the bus and it's not fair?
I think it's a little bit of both. Look, just like this community, I've been observing this for a long time, and police are notoriously resistant to what they is outside interference and outside scrutiny. That has to change. As I tell Mike Mazzeo, who I don't mind saying publicly is a good friend of mine. In fact, I was the one who lobbied for Mike to be on that commission, and I had to be the one to tell him that he had to go off the commission. But I say to Mike all along, you can't hide behind, what do you call it, confidentiality. Now, let me tell you, the rules have to change at the state level, because the state government has created a lot of places for unions to hide and to do that work out of the public eye. That can no longer be tolerated. So I think that there's going to be a tremendous a reawakening and revelation that goes on with a lot of pressure going to Albany. Governor Cuomo has to answer for why did he want to look like George Wallace the other night? Why would the state police be dispatched to Rochester with police dogs, with fire hoses? That's George Wallace stuff. Why would Governor Cuomo, who's been a very good governor, want to associate? I haven't heard him denounce that. And people are outraged when they saw those dogs down there. They're outraged when they saw those dogs down there. So I think that everybody, the Attorney General, God bless her soul, what's taking her so long? What's taking her so long? She's had this case for 4 months. All of a sudden, now that all this publicity comes, now she jumps into action. I think it's a legitimate question. Look, I live long enough. I'm not reckless. I'm not a firebrand. But I know the right questions to ask, and those are some of the right questions. You'll see some of them in this press release. Right questions to ask, because nobody in this situation is totally blameless. Everybody has contributed to this mess, and they need to own up to it, and they need to say we got to fix it, because it can't happen ever and ever again.
Just to clarify the timeline a little bit here, when were Mazzeo and Singletary actually moved to the board?
Last Friday.
Last Friday.
You removed Mazzeo because you have to have both the police and the union?
No, because Mazzeo, as you saw his statement, some of you were probably there. Last night I listened to his hour press conference, and he is in defense mode. All right. So he has a, and I told Mike this. I said, Mike, now I didn't remove it. The mayor removed it, but I called him to say, Mike, this was done with our concurrence and our knowledge, and I'm going to tell you why I think you can no longer serve on this commission. You've got a conflict. And we don't need to be spending our time in our meetings dealing with people who keep saying, why is Mike Mazzeo here? Why is Laurent Singletary here? Let's remove them. There are other people who bring the same level of knowledge, and they can bring it into this process without the baggage. So it wasn't that one went, the other went. They happen to come from really the same sector.
You support the mayor, but there are still some of these activists who, I mean, they just wrote on City Hall late or in the early morning hours, whenever they wrote it, that you know, calling for her resignation, and that's continuing even with the chief stepping down.
Yeah. Look, I've been in her shoes, so it's not blind allegiance to her. I consider the mayor to be a good friend. I've counseled her, give her the best of my knowledge and experience. Some of it she listens to, some of it she doesn't. That's her prerogative. The mayor made mistakes. If nothing more, and I say this, and I've said this to her, so I'm not saying something to you, if nothing more for not being curious, how do you ignore a medical examiner's proclamation that a person in your custody died of asphyxia while restrained? I mean, I can't think of a better roadmap that the medical examiner was trying to paint. How does somebody, her lawyers, her police department, her other staff say, Mayor, we got a problem here. So the fact that this incuriosity existed for 4 months is really an issue that she has to adjust to. Is it fatal? Is it fatal? I believe that, and remember now, she's of the same generation of the people who demanded that she leave office. The question has to be asked, has she lost their faith, their trust irrevocably, or are there things that she can do to work to restore that faith? It's a long, arduous process. You know, it's like trying to recover from any kind of serious problem, addiction or otherwise. You just don't say, ooh, and you're done with it. This is a long, and I've been trying to counsel the mayor and encourage her to look in that direction, okay? These people are not going to be easily pacified. Because they got a victory under their belt. They wanted the chief gone, chief's gone. I don't think they expected everybody to walk with him. Chief's gone, okay? So now let's keep the pressure on. And the mayor's going to dig in her heels, I know her. But let's say, beyond that, okay, I know you want me out of here. I'm here today. What is it that we need to do? And that, don't send it by press statement. Say it to them sitting across the table in the same room. Don't say it on Zoom. Say it to them in person. That's my point.
The protest organizers and the Prue family have called Daniel Turk's death a murder. Would you agree with that statement?
I would say this. That has to be determined. And I don't think, you know, in the environment in which we now exist, it's hard to get a conviction against a police officer. I think it was gross negligence. I think it was I don't care what the training protocol says. It was gross negligence on their part. And they got to own up to that, all right? That man was in extreme mental anguish, distress. The family told him that when they called 911. You know, we created something under Frederick Alexander when he was deputy chief called the Emotionally Disturbed Persons Response Team, EMRPT. All right, we created that, and we invested training in about 70 or 80 police officers, and they were supposed to be dispatched anytime 911 got a call. It was a mental health issue. They were the ones dispatched to the scene with the charge to defuse the situation. Now, I suspect that was in 2002, 2003. I talked to Cedric yesterday. He doesn't know whether that team still exists, okay? But that was specially trained people. Now, I suspect in today's environment, people will say, no, just don't send police officers. Okay, you got to send qualified, trained, medical, clinical personnel. I would agree with that. But I would not send them in a situation like that, unprotected. They need somebody there with them in case that thing turns ugly real fast. Because you don't ask them to put their lives on the line. They're doctors and nurses. They're not police officers. They're not trained. And they should not be wearing guns, despite what Donald Trump and other people think. So, I think we need to find out. That proved to be extremely effective. What happened to it? Maybe you don't use that same acronym. Do you have something? I don't think CIT and FIT fits that model. Okay? I don't think that they get the kind of training. Somebody put up, in our meeting, one of our clinicians put a question up that we're going to put to the chief. We should have community health workers. These are not degreed people, but these are people who understand the community, who understand the players. They can be trained to accompany police. There's all kinds of models out there that we ought to be exploring. So that's why I think there's an opportunity here to move this needle a lot further than it is. Thank you so much.
Can I grab one of these? I was a few minutes late arriving.
I got one for you.
Oh, thank you, Robert.
All right.
It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. I see you on television.
Yeah, well, I've left for a long
In fact,
time.
oh, you did? I didn't know you had left.
15 years in back, so I just haven't seen you.
Yeah, I saw you there. I said, word, she's over there at John now. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Thanks, Mayor.
Appreciate it. Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
I haven't bumped into you, so good to see you again.
All right.